We are now live.
Thank you, Nicole. Good afternoon and welcome. I'd like to call to order the February 22nd, 2023 City of Asheville Multimodal Transportation Commission meeting. My name is Dennis Wenzel and I'm the chair of this group. Our meetings continue to be held virtually for the time being, but there are many ways for interested parties to participate in this gathering. The City of Asheville's engagement hub, which includes a variety of links and phone numbers, can be found on the Multimodal Transportation Commission page of the City of Asheville's website. Visiting this page is the best way to take part in our virtual meetings. Members, staff, and guests, please remember to keep your microphones muted at all times when you're not speaking so that we can minimize feedback and other background noises. I'd like to now welcome our commission members. Members, when I call your name, please introduce yourself and let us know what interest you represent. Randy Warren.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm Randy Warren. I'm the vice chair, and I'm also involved with the Bike Ped Task Force.
Hey, Randy. Kenny Armstrong.
Hello, my name is Kenny Armstrong. I also sit on the Greenway Committee, but I represent all the interests.
Thanks, Kenny. Jack Eggleman. Oh, Jack, you're muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that. I'm Jack Eigelman, and I'm at-large member.
Hey, Jack. Leanna Joyner.
Hi there, Leanna Joyner. I represent Greenway Committee to the Multimodal Commission.
Hey, Leanna. Pat Katz.
Hi, my name's Pat Katz. I am at large bicycling, which I did this morning with my husband in Yankeetown, Florida, which is on the Gulf Coast. So bicycle interest predominantly. Hi.
Hey, Pat. Bill Loftus.
Hey, Bill Loftus here, and I am on the Transit Committee.
And our newest member, Joseph Chesler. Joseph, we're hearing you. I know he's coming in remote from Mexico, so we might be having some connecting issues, but I'm sure he'll talk to us as soon as he can. Joe Archibald. Are you there, Joe?
Hey, Joseph? Yeah, I am. Sorry about that. Joe Archibald. I am the Planning and Zoning Commission liaison to Multimodal.
Thanks, Joe. Joseph, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, I had my mute button on. Joe Chesler, I'm an at-large member, new to the commission, and serve as liaison also to Transit. So a pleasure to be with you all.
Welcome. Elizabeth Likas.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Likas. I am the liaison to the Neighborhood Advisory Council, and also Greenways are one of my big interests.
Hey, Elizabeth. And last but not least, Maggie Allman.
Hey, y'all. Nice to see you. I'm the council liaison.
Hey, Maggie. Welcome. Okay. The first order of business is going to review today's agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Leanna. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thanks, Leanna. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion to second. Any comments on today's agenda? All right. We're going to go through a roll call vote. Randy Warren.
Aye.
Kenny Armstrong.
Aye.
Jack Eigelman.
Aye.
Leanna Joyner.
Aye.
Pat Katz.
Aye.
Bill Loftus.
Aye.
And Joseph Chesler.
Aye.
Excellent. I'm voting aye as well. The motion carries. Next item is to review the revised minutes from the October 26th, 2022 meeting. The revision was adding the SMART grant motion to the minutes. I believe that's been added. So if I can get a motion to approve these minutes.
Sure. I'll second then. And I want to appreciate too us putting in all the motions into writing, because doing the meeting minutes in this format does allow us more detail because people can go back and view the video, but it makes it more unwieldy in terms of picking out the highlights. And so I think it's important and I think necessary that we at least put all the motions in there. So I appreciate that revision.
Excellent. Got a motion and a second. Any comments or additional questions? Without comment or question, we'll do a vote. Randy Warren.
Aye.
Kenny Armstrong.
Aye.
Jack.
Aye.
Leanna.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Bill. And Joseph.
I would vote aye.
I'm an aye.
All right.
Sorry, Randy. Dennis, I'm an aye.
That's all right. And I voted aye as well. Motion carries. We are rolling right along. Next order of business to review and approve the December 7, 2022 minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Jack. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on the December 7th minutes? Without comment or question, we'll have a vote of approval. Randy?
Aye.
Kenny?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Leanna?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Bill?
I abstain. I wasn't there.
All right. And Joseph?
Abstain. I wasn't there either.
And I am a aye. Motion carries. Well done. Is there any public comment for today? I do not believe there is public comment for today. So we'll go on to new business. The first item of new business, we have a brand spanking new member of our group, Joseph Chesler. Joseph, do you have a couple of minutes to give us a quick hello and introduction?
Can't wait. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Just want to let you know I am a certified planner with AICP and a floodplain manager. I moved to North Carolina in 2006 after serving as senior environmental planning with the Walt Disney Company and Walt Disney Imagineering, and as chief of planning with LA County, Los Angeles County Beaches and Harbors. Lived in Hendersonville and Asheville for the last 16 years. I'm a bicycle advocate and trip leader with Hustling International. Was a former board member with them until 2 years ago. Since moving to North Carolina, I've always wanted to drive a bus, so I got my commercial driver's license and have been a charter bus operator ever since. Part-time. I don't do it much now, but look forward to working with you to advocate for thoughtful integration of all forms of transportation where appropriate and seeking to improve our community and region. It's just a real pleasure to be with you all.
Welcome, Joseph.
Glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dennis, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Looked like he accidentally might have left the meeting, so maybe he'll be back.
Oh, there he is. Yeah, sorry about that.
I've been wrestling with AT&T of late, so my apologies. I'm going to turn my camera off in hopes of saving some bandwidth here. Okay. Welcome, Chester. Chester, hello. Next item is the
Thank you.
Multimodal Commission membership. Jessica, would you like to address that?
Sure. So we have five applications here for your consideration. And this would be to fill Councilmember Ullman's seat now that she is a council member and our liaison. So we're looking for a motion to recommend appointment of one of these folks or not, and then it will make its way to the council with your recommendation for official appointment. I'm not sure if it will be their next meeting, but perhaps the one after that. I'm not quite sure.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to say this is, again, an embarrassment of riches. These folks are all fantastic, and I'm really excited to have this awesome list. A couple of things I like to think. Obviously, not everyone's going to be a part of our group immediately, so I'd like to keep some of these folks as part of people that we consider going forward, but also maybe we can approach them to ask them to be a part of our committees as well, because they have excellent backgrounds and there's a lot of good that I see here, and I'm really excited for them to participate in some way in what we are trying to get accomplished here. So with that, I'd like to kind of open it up for comments or questions or recommendations from the commission. Joe?
I'll just make the same kind of comments I make every time. I think it's good. I do definitely appreciate all these people. It definitely brings a lot of background, and I think you're correct, Dennis. It would be great to kind of keep these people on the radar and maybe even get them involved in some of the other working groups. But I mean, trying to get diversity, I think it's always a problem, and I think there's at least a couple of people, applicants that were towards the younger age, maybe different regions, areas of the city that we don't have members on. So that might be, if I was a voting member, might sway me just to, again, get as inclusive as we can with lives. So.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Thanks.
Randy?
Yeah, definitely. I think diversity is important, and so that's something always to consider, where they live in the city, for example, and the age, and male, female, and things like that too, if they're a member of any underrepresented group. It's interesting because none of these people have direct bicycle pedestrian advocacy experience, which is always great to see, but also unusual. They do have a wide variety of things they bring to the table. I think different people in terms of their experiences, in terms of using multimodal transportation, and their other experiences in terms of politics or business or management, things like that too. I think on my list I put down Shelley, I'm not sure how to say her last name, McKinchy, first, because I think her breadth of experience in terms of a cyclist and political experience, and some of the laudations she achieved or accolades she achieved for sort of political work, I think was notable to me. Her work in diverse communities. She's been in major cities before. She's been in Africa before doing things. And so it seems like the experience that she brings to the table, for me at least, she was my number one candidate.
Thanks, Randy. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just, in my rankings, Shelley was also my top. I struggled with that, though. I thought, again, all were super strong candidates. So I don't know that that's a strong first, but she did come up as number one on my list. And I don't know if anyone could chime in on perspective of, I definitely agree with being as inclusive as possible on the committee, but I'm wondering if there are any holes in skills or representation. I was having a little bit of trouble sorting that out of who's who on our committee and what backgrounds they have. So does anyone have any insight of what big holes might exist on our committee?
Leon, did you have a thought about that? No, okay.
I don't have a specific thought in response to Jack.
Okay. Yeah, Jack, I mean, I feel like we have been very lucky in getting a lot of folks that have very specific advocacy experience. And, I think maybe the times of our meetings, we tend to self-select because it's very difficult for a lot of folks to participate at this time of the week, of the day, that kind of thing. So I think, we've struggled with getting younger folks. I think we've struggled with folks that, I think are maybe newer to this, process. So we tend to have folks that know how to participate or have had some experience of participating in the past. But, I don't know if we have a glaring hole or gap in who we have. I think we have a very strong group, but I always want to make sure if I look for something where I see maybe there's someone that I don't feel is represented or no one else looks like that person, I'm drawn to that because I think that could add a perspective that maybe we don't already have. Leanna, did you have a comment?
I do. It's probably my own bias here, so you can take that with a grain of salt. But I was particularly took note of Abigail's kind of background and perspective around kind of marketing and messaging and thinking about the work that we do. That I think Randy pointed out as advocacy, and Jack talked about related to Shelley. But I think all of them are great, and I could stand up and vote for any one of them today. I do think that so much of our collective work and uplifting our shared interests around multimodal transportation rests in being a strong voice and a cohesive voice, and to the degree that we have folks that can help us ourselves organize around those concepts, I think will be valuable.
I agree. Thank you. Elizabeth?
And my question was more around the holes and things that could be filled, gaps, other perspectives. And part of my struggle is I don't really know very many people on this group very well, and sort of backgrounds, where you live, what those interests are, except when we do those brief introductions. So from those of you that have been on this group, have there been, I don't know, everything from the area of the city to business, realty, somebody that bikes and rollerblades and uses greenways. I just I couldn't tell you how to fill the gaps because I don't really know what the gaps are.
Yeah, understood. Elizabeth, I'm sorry. Jessica, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I guess the only thing I could say is that we do collect demographic information and like general location information in our applications, but I don't know that we've published that or put that out at any time recently. And we'd be happy to put that information together if that helps, but it doesn't really speak to like personal experience and knowledge and such that you're talking about, Elizabeth. But I do think that obviously we're missing diversity. I would say probably, well, the most obvious would be from a race perspective and trying to have some BIPOC inclusion in this group, and potentially age, but it's so hard for me to know. But I don't know. I kind of tend to agree with Randy. I don't know that we need somebody that's got like a background in planning or specific professional skills. I think we just need folks that have an interest and want to contribute.
Hey, I agree with you. And before I go to Joe next, one of the things that I think about is someone that is actively using the networks. I think is really important to me. When I see that they have participated in the transit system, that they're active users and consumers of the bike lanes and the greenways, I think that really helps because that is real-time, routine frequency of experience that can really show up and make allow us or help us to make some decisions here. Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. I just wanted to comment as one of the longer time members here. And Jessica's right. Certainly, my community and more. But I guess I would say people who ride transit because they have personal cars has been over the 5.5 years I've been on probably the biggest lacking. And I think you're right, Dennis. It has to do with time of the meetings. It's purely based on that. I kind of noted Elise Martyr's application. She's younger females, seems to, use the transit system a lot. And then I think, my other one was ironically Tom Hunter, especially because he seems to be coming from a background that's maybe not what a lot of the members have. I mean, he's a major business owner. Whether that's good or bad for this commission, I'm not sure, but it was interesting. Let's just say that.
Thanks, Joe. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Pat? Nope, you're muted, Pat.
I had the same reaction, Joe, to Tom Hunter. He would bring in a totally different perspective than a lot of us, having been in a position to donate money and to be in maybe in a sphere where people spend a lot more money contributing to things. And I don't know if that would be better for a nonprofit, but he would bring maybe a business owner's perspective, which we've butted up against a few times trying to get restriped streets and things like that. And it just seems like a very different background from a lot of the rest of us. I feel like I've had experience with working with DOT and grant money, sort of the way Jessica does from a staff member perspective and the length of time it takes to get anything done in the government process. It could be an education for this guy as well to see the government process and how it takes time. But to me, it sounds like a very different perspective. That's it.
Thanks, Pat. Bill?
Yeah, I'm inclined to go with the youth here. They're all qualified, and so I agree with everybody saying those things. But if somebody's on the plate that's, a generation younger than me, that means a lot. I think there's things that come into the conversations that I would never think about. And I'm probably not speaking for everybody in the group because I'm probably the oldest guy here. But I think it's nice to have people my children's age representing the public. So that's where I would go.
Excellent. Any other comment? Well, Bill, with that, would you like to make a motion?
So I would like to propose that, and I think the young one here is, y'all help me, is Elise Martyr, correct? That's the young one?
I believe so, yes, I believe.
Yeah, so I'd like to propose that we make a motion that we accept Elise Martyr's application to join the Multimodal Transportation Commission.
Okay, can I get a second?
This is Kenny. I second. I also was struck with her application.
Thanks, Kenny. And some comment, Randy?
Yeah, I appreciate she's 30, and that's great. And I wish she was better qualified. I don't feel like she's, I think that she's at least qualified in terms of people's perspective. Would be great. I wish we had somebody who was more active and someone who had better experience at 30. But I do appreciate that it's younger, and it'd be great. I think it'd be great. But I don't think she's the best person.
Understood. Any other comments or questions? Joe?
Sorry, I just noticed I was reading her application again. It does say she's a member of the Neighborhood Advisory Commission. So for what that's worth.
Thank you. Bill?
Well, now it's Pat.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Name's coming up. Do we have a need in the neighborhood advisory that she might be better placed? That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, I believe her application is for this position with our group. I believe there's ways of applying through those channels for this group as well. But I think we're considering this application process. Randy?
Actually, in her letter, she writes it out to this group and the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and then as a third possibility to Asheville Buncombe Air Quality Board. So she did apply naming Multimodal as one of the groups, but also she mentioned the Neighborhood Advisory Committee as a group she's applying to. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I believe the way that the messages from the city have been going out about vacancies, they've been encouraging that multiple requests, so we can be kind of utilize those folks. That's the sense that when I read through those messages that come out, that's the sense that I got of what made me think when I was reading her information that she submitted. Elizabeth?
Yes, she did just join the Neighborhood Advisory Council last month. So yeah.
All right. Joseph?
I'm really intrigued by the conversation. I've read through the applications. I was tempted to support Bill's motion for Elise, but I think the Neighborhood Advisory Commission role is something that she should retain. And I liked Joe's comments and the application by Shelley and would rather see her as more of a diversity member of the commission. So I would vote against Elise at this time.
Okay, and it does
in favor of Shelley.
Thanks, Joseph. Yeah, and it does kind of change my opinion a little bit. The fact that she was appointed last night to a different committee. So if you would, Joseph, you'd be interested in making a motion of substitution to recommend someone else, I think that might work logistically.
Yeah, I think that would probably be most appropriate. I would move that in lieu of Elise Martyr, that we select Shelley McKechnie as a member of the commission.
Thank you, Joseph. Can I get a second?
It's a substitute, yeah.
Yes.
I would second that, Dennis.
Oh,
this is Jack.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, and
I think if we're substituting from the person motion, the person who made the first motion has to accept the amendment to the motion.
Okay. Bill, do you accept that substitution?
I guess. Can we just have a vote and have the last one, the one with the most votes wins?
Sure. I think, yes. Okay, so we can have a vote on Elise? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, if we just, how many for Elise, how many for Shelley, and the one that gets the most votes wins. So I can withdraw my motion. I can withdraw my motion and let's go through this process. Does that work for you, Dennis?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, I would withdraw Shelley's motion until we vote on yours, Bill.
All right. I just like that process better than.
Okay, perfect. So I have a motion and a second for Elise Motter. Any other comments, questions? We're gonna do a vote. Randy Warren.
I just have one, sorry, I have one question.
Yes.
There isn't anything that would preclude someone sitting on a different committee, like a neighborhood commission, from additionally serving here. I know we have a formal representative from the neighborhood commission to this group, but there's nothing for someone who's available and committed to serving two committees that would prohibit or inhibit that. Is that correct?
Jessica?
My understanding is that an individual can be actively a member of two different city-sponsored boards, committee, commissions, whatever. So technically, yes, if she were appointed to NAC, she could serve on that, and she could serve on Multimodal Transportation Commission. Of course, now that, and I was unaware that she had gotten appointed to another commission, I would want to check with her to see if she wants to do 2, if you guys moved her forward. I have one suggestion. If you could select or rank 1, 2, like a first and a second or something. And if Elise is one of those and she declines wanting to move forward with multimodal, then we can put forward the other person to council. And I think technically, since Bill had a motion, either has to rescind it or it has to be voted on and then move on to another motion if his motion fails, technically.
Yeah, I withdrew it, Jessica.
Okay, so Bill withdrew his motion. And so
Right.
we have a motion from Joseph, I believe.
I think Joseph has removed his as well.
Okay, so we have a clear slate.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was a little mess I created. Jack.
Yeah, I am wondering if maybe we could table this until we can maybe make just I think having 5 such good candidates has made this discussion a little bit clunky. So I'm wondering if we could step back, find a way for each person to rank them, a very simple way, and maybe do, a 1 and 2 preference, and sort of what Jessica was suggesting, and then see what surfaces to the top. I'm having trouble myself juggling all the things. I was compelled to think that, serving on 2 commissions sounds like too much, but then probably most of us also serve on other boards and other things like that. So I'm struggling a little bit with all the variables. But I would be willing to vote. I think I would be happy to do that as well, but thought some stepping back might be useful.
Thanks, Jack. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I would say too, as someone who, when I got on the Neighborhood Advisory Council and was appointed to this as the liaison, I had not ever been, I had applied for other things and one of the frustrating points for me living in Asheville is there are some people on 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 committees and others not getting appointed at all. And so if we know somebody's already on one, I think just that breadth of people being involved across the city. I don't know if Shelley is involved in anything else officially, but I'm not a voting member, but I think spreading that out a little bit to different members would be helpful. And either one of them are fine, but that's just another perspective.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Kenny?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, when we talk about diversity, I think it's nice to have people who aren't already on committees. And I do wonder that Elise might be strained sitting on multiple committees, and I wouldn't really want to push her in a certain direction if she hasn't agreed to do that. So, but I also support the idea of some kind of voting mechanism so we don't have to just, push somebody forward and make a motion. We could make it a little bit more scientific and, assign points for certain things, whether it's, however we decide to do that. But I think that might be a simpler way to do it in the future. Say we have 5 applicants, we can each assign points, and whoever gets the most points gets moved forward. That seems like a more straightforward way to do that.
Thanks, Kenny. Leanna?
Just thinking about equity and thinking about how a points-based system probably preferences people with power and experience, and sometimes we can learn a lot from people who might have different lived experiences and different valuable criteria that they bring. So I think something that takes that into account, if we're really moving in the direction of some sort of ranking of candidates, which I would honestly prefer not to do, would be an important consideration. Because I think sometimes saying, we're valuing professional experience, say, over something else that could really trip us up in terms of trying to meet objectives that we might all collectively agree are important in terms of equity.
Thanks, Leona. Kenny?
Yeah, just to reiterate what I keep saying, some of these people applied like a long time ago. So I wonder how to, prioritize when people actually apply for these and whether they're still interested at all. Like, is there a way that we can invite everybody to come to a meeting, and then whoever shows up and is still actively interested, that's who gets pushed to the top of the list?
Yeah, and maybe, for the kind of ease of this process, it does. I feel like we're kind of hashing out the process by which we nominate folks to the city council, and so I think that's a good discussion to have. Separate of that, I'd like to see if possible if we can push somebody to the forefront. I have to say that with Elise's appointment, it changes my thoughts about it, because I know coming onto a new group, all of a sudden you have this new work, you're kind of getting into a new rhythm. So I think introducing two of those at the same time might be a little bit challenging for anyone. So I like the idea of maybe even doing two. We can kind of check in and see, or we make a recommendation today if possible. But if not, we can kind of take a step back and kind of go through the process. But I'd like to see maybe that we can, I feel like these folks are all pretty solid, bets here. So if we can make a pushing someone to the council so they can make a move, we can kind of move forward if possible. Leanna?
I'm going to attempt a motion that's based on a slate, I guess, a slate of candidates that we can move through with. We can rearrange it, I suppose. We can modify the proposal, but with the order being check with Elise around her capacity and continued interest, which may have changed since last night. Second, Shelley. Third, I don't know, Abigail. Fourth, Lance. Fifth, Tom. Such that depending on timing, availability, how long their applications have been sitting fallow, other things that might have come up in life, we have a means through which we can move to bring someone else on.
All right. We have a motion. Can I get a second on that motion?
I'll second. This is Kenny. I love that.
Thank you, Kenny. Comments, Randy?
Yeah, I think without having some sort of system to be able to rank candidates, it's hard to rank them just in that way, because after we're having a hard time picking the first person, let alone the second, third, fourth, fifth person. So, I don't think we should have a slate like that. It's too complicated, because again, we can't decide on the number one person. How are we going to decide on the number three person? That doesn't seem like a good thing. And we shouldn't just, let's put the third person down. Who's going to pick them anyway? Because that's not a good way to go about things, because they make it out of that third person. So I don't think we should vote on a ranked system right now without having a way to do that for each person, and then it wouldn't be one thing. So I think we should either say one person we recommend now to city council for this position, or establish a system in which we're going to rank people, and then everybody fills out metrics or whatever it is to get that ranking system, and then we see who comes out on top, and then we say, here's what happened from this process we went through, and here's the ranking we got from that, and then approve that or not approve that. But just to randomly throw out a ranking system right now, or a ranked slate of candidates, doesn't seem like the appropriate thing to do.
Thanks, Randy. Any other comments? All right, so we have a motion and a second, so we're going to go through a vote. Randy Warren?
Nay.
Kenny Armstrong?
Aye.
Jack Eigelman?
Aye.
Leanna Joyner?
Aye.
Pat Katz?
Aye.
Bill Loftus?
Aye.
And Joseph Chesler?
Vote nay. I think Randy's got a good point.
Okay, and I'm going to vote aye as well. The motion carries. I do appreciate the point, Randy. I agree with you, and I think we'll kind of talk about, maybe we can have some of the systems in place for when we get this in the future. I know this is kind of the first time we're kind of running through this way with multiple candidates. Randy, do you have a comment?
Yeah, can you just please then tell me again what we just proved? Because I didn't really understand what the whole ranking was. So we just set a 1 through 5 ranking right now that we just approved. And can you tell me what it was so I can write it down in my notes, please?
Yeah, I believe the motion was to put forward all 5 candidates in an order to for council consideration. Elise, Shelley, Lance, Abigail, and Tom, I believe was the order. Does that sound right, Leanna? I want to make sure I'm.
Yeah, that's right. It was Elise, Shelley, Abigail, Lance, Tom.
Thank you. Jessica?
So I think what staff will do is we will touch base with all 5 of those candidates and just ask if they are still interested. I think the oldest application we have is from August, so that one is pretty old, but the rest of them are from January. So that's pretty recent. But we'll touch base with all 5, ask them if they're still interested. And then if anybody happens to drop out of that list, then we'll just forward the remaining candidates in that order as recommendation to the council.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Randy?
Yeah, Elise's application is from May. It's the oldest one.
Sorry about that.
Wow. That's a pretty good find.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, just Randy, you got a good idea. We need to decide how to do this. Can we figure out a task force or something? We don't have to all do it, but I proposed, Dennis, is one or a few people organize a way in which we can do this and have a process as opposed to just an ad hoc selection method.
Leanna?
I put a suggestion in the chat for a method where we could better assess our own skills collectively in terms of what knowledge, skills, and lived experience we all bring to the table, and where gaps might exist that would help us be more thoughtful in the future. I'd be happy to craft a springboard for the matrix, and maybe if another person or two could help me just vet that, then we could circulate it to this group to complete.
Okay. Would anyone just like to raise their hand and join Leanna in this process? Joseph?
Great. Joseph and Jack.
Yeah, Leanna.
Thanks.
That'd be great. I think my application was 11 months in arrears. So I was shocked when Jessica called or wrote to me. Anyway, but we'll be happy to help.
Excellent. Okay. Pat, do you have a comment?
No, just I was 2 years because there were.
Yeah, I think it's one of those challenging processes within the city. They have there are a lot of processes that are going through there, and I think this is one of them that in the municipality I lived in before I moved to Asheville, it was the exact same way, where it was just one of those kind of, for whatever reason, it kind of falls off the radar maybe of many folks. So I know that there's some effort to try to improve that process, and maybe we can shine some light on it and give a good process. I can't say just finally, it always takes me more time when I go through this. I have to kind of lay them all out on my screen, and I read and I go back and I go back and I go back, because it is a lot of information. And I think my opinion changes as I go back and read it. So it always takes me about a half hour, 45 minutes to kind of go through all the applications and really get a feel for what my opinion is there. Jessica.
I was just going to say, like, we've had some openings recently because of people moving and Maggie becoming a council person. But usually this has been a pretty steady membership for as long as I've been here. So there's not often vacancies, which is part of why it might take somebody a really long time. And I will mention that we are discussing, the city is discussing, and I think the Boards and Commissions Committee is talking about trying to improve the process so that it aligns better with council meetings. And so it will be like a quarterly process where they'll solicit applications for a month. They'll get the applications to the boards, committees, and commissions to get their recommendations the next month. And then the third month it goes to council for approval, and then the cycle begins again. So sounds like more complicated, but it actually, I think, will be easier for staff and for everybody else involved.
Thanks, Jessica. Jack, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just real quick. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents, and thank you, Leanna, for taking the lead on doing this. I think what would streamline the process is if we each had a way, as we're sort of proposing, to be able to know what's important in these candidates to help us individually rank them. So when we come to the meeting, we can provide, a thoughtful, top candidate. And I think that would streamline the discussion a little bit. And I think a thoughtful way to do it to make sure we're being inclusive, as Leanna's suggesting, is really important. So I just wanted to put those, just to add to that.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, the next item, a timely item, is an appointment of a new chair and vice chair to the MMTC. So this is something that we talk about every year. There has been discussion that we were talking about that rotating these positions of chair and vice chair gives us all, and I apologize for the lack of video, but I think I'll go away again. My internet's not great. But the rotating these chairs could kind of change the tenor of this meeting a little bit, having a little bit, different forms of our discussions just by how reflective that is of the person who's leading the meeting. And also to give everyone an opportunity to kind of, participate in a new and exciting, different way. So with that, and this is kind of, just a raising the hand kind of situation, with that, if anyone's interested in participating in this group by becoming the chair and or vice chair, now is an excellent time to express your opinion to do so. Is there anyone that has that opinion or desire? But we seem to have it's a rush to the front. It's like the gates at a Rolling Stones concert. It's always challenging for us because, we want to make sure. Joe. I thought Joe was raising his hand. He is not. Jessica, yes, please.
I'll just say that the only added extra time that it involves being the chair and the vice chair, I think, is there's a pre-meeting a couple weeks before your meeting. You'll meet with me and or my staff and go over the agenda. Staff is the one that creates the agenda and goes over it, and then we make changes or add things or subtract things. So it's an extra hour essentially of time. Occasionally we'll skip the meeting or skip that pre-meeting. So it's not a huge extra commitment, if that helps anybody.
Joe?
I just wanted to say, Dennis, that I think you've done a great job with the meetings, and if I could vote, I would recommend you again for chair. Sorry.
Thanks, Joe. All right. Well, I mean, this is not a closed issue. There's always opportunities to have conversations any time of day, any day of the week, any day of the month. So just reach out and let me know if you are interested in doing so. Okay. The next item is so sad. P&Z zoning, Planning and Zoning Commission liaison. Jessica.
So this is something that Joe brought up via email to myself and Dennis and Randy, a conversation about his pending rolling off of our commission and as the liaison to the planning and zoning. So one of the things that Joe brought up was the possibility, since planning and zoning is a city county or has county members on it, the concept of whether it would be appropriate to have the liaison to the multimodal potentially be a county resident that sits on the P&Z. Joe, did you have, this is not an action item, it's just sort of a discussion topic, but I have not yet even inquired to see if that is okay under ordinance, but it's a non-voting position, so I'm not sure the ordinance probably doesn't even speak to it directly. Joe, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. So I've had discussions with Will, Todd, and also Janice Asheville, who's the P&Z city attorney that works with P&Z, and also in an email conversation with Nathan Bennington, who's the county planning director. No one
Could you
seems to
speak
really
a little
have
louder, Joe? Sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm outside. It might be a little
There you
windy. None of those people has expressed any major reservations about a county, one of the P&Z county appointees serving as the liaison, because it's a non-voting position. It seems like it's council be okay with it. And then, is there anything in either the charter of Multimodal or some state ordinance that says that it would be a problem, or if the Buncombe County Commissioners think it would be a problem? You know, that was Nathan Pennington's comment with the county commissioners, you know, not think, you know, look at that positively. So yeah, so far there has been no pushback on it to the people I've spoken with. I will say we have started planning and zoning. Has put forward one of the county representatives on planning and zoning is going to be the representative for a working group around the missing middle housing study, and there were no issues with that as well. So I've heard so far there doesn't seem to be a legal problem. So it really is dependent upon would Multimodal be okay with that? Is Planning and Zoning Commission okay with it? And the reason it started up is there are the two county appointees that we have right now on P&Z are both interested in Big Pit, Asheville, around the Long Shoals Road area. So it could also be a great way to help with some of those conversations that have happened about a city countywide planning agency and those kinds of things. So I think it could be beneficial. So.
Thanks, Joe. Joseph, do you have a comment?
Just a point of order, notwithstanding this current discussion. I thought, weren't we supposed to vote on the chair and vice chair? Or did I miss something? It shows as an action item.
Nobody nominated. There were no nominations. So
the chair and vice chair, chair and vice chair roll over. Is that what I'm to understand?
Yes.
Okay. Pardon me. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Maggie?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious about the why behind the idea of having a county rep be our P&Z liaison. And you touched on it briefly towards the end, Joe, but just curious if is it mostly like the people who are willing are county appointees or what's more of the why behind that?
There is a little bit of that. It's also just wondering too if that doesn't just open up the chance for someone who is more interested to be able to participate. In other words, if one of the county appointees and current in the future at any point in time is, you know, a super huge multimodal advocate, but they're restricted from being liaison only because their county appointee seems, you know, disingenuous in some ways. So yeah.
I'll just
I guess
share that, like, I think as we it is looking likely that, or my understanding is that staff from both the city and the county are trying to include funding for a proposal about looking at kind of what a joint transit agency could look like. And so if those budget proposals come through and if those budgets are approved, two big ifs, next year could be a really important time for our two organizations to be looking for the synergies and looking for places where transit can be improved. Huge ifs, still a long way to go. So I appreciate and am excited by the sentiment of having collaboration as we think towards stuff like this. My only reservation is it feels like maybe a little baby shoehorned in of like, if we really want collaborative input, maybe it should be around multimodal membership, not necessarily P&Z, but I'm also not trying to like start a whole work stream for everybody. So I just, you know, I'm a liaison. I don't have a vote on this. I just wanted to share some of the things that are going through my mind, that I do like the spirit of collaboration, and perhaps that means as any feasibility study could come about next year, maybe there is a steering committee or a task force of people that are involved. So I don't have like a strict opinion. I just wanted to share some of the thoughts flowing around as I listen. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Maggie. I agree with you, and I think there is an opportunity there, but notwithstanding kind of that, maybe the transit solution, what matters to me is that we have someone in P&Z that really is bringing to us that information that applies to us. So much goes through that group. I think it's, you know, it can be overwhelming. There is so much information that happens in P&Z. So the way that Joe has done a good job of balancing that and making sure that we're up to date on the things that are touching that group that matter to us, so that we can kind of get involved or make sure we're not blindsided by anything. That's really the goal, and that the person's, you know, residency, I think, is less important to me than their ability or willingness to ferret through all of that information and bring us, you know, kind of what makes sense to dovetail into what we're trying to accomplish on our side as well.
Yeah, and I think that is, you know, that gets to.
Sorry, Joe, you're breaking up.
Both, you know, legal to the groups that there. Sorry, that there isn't. No, you're the county appointee. You can't liaison. You know, I would hate to see that if it again is someone that is really interested in this kind of work.
Gotcha. Randy?
Yeah, I appreciate Joe wanting to be outside today. It's a really nice day. But Joe has done such a fantastic job. And so I think that, you know, I think he's been on the whole time I've been on the commission. So that role has been fulfilled so well by you, Joe, that for me, like Dennis was saying, the information we're getting from you on a monthly basis has been so valuable that I want that to continue, whether it's you, obviously not for too much longer, or the person that replaces you. And again, because it's not, it's more, again, the transfer of information between two groups rather than representing a group from Asheville. So if you're representing a group specifically from Asheville and you didn't live in Asheville, that'd be an issue. But since you're representing a group to this group, it seems like the residency is not as much of an issue.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Kenny?
Yeah, I just fully support that. I don't think it matters if you're living in Leicester or Inca, as long as you're interested and can present the information well. And note that Joe's term ends in September, so we've got a little while to figure this out. But I move that we require Joe Archibald to attend every meeting in perpetuity.
I don't think we have a second there. So that's good of me. That's appreciated. Joe?
Two other quick things. One, actually, my term with PNC ends on 13th for some reason. Back when I was appointed. Anyway, August. I won't be able to be in attendance for the August meeting.
Yeah, Joe, you're really breaking up there. I think the sunshine's affecting our connection here.
Discussion. I'm trying to start discussion with PC. Hey, I'm not the chair. I'm not going to lead on my longer because that group is really taking curve to take up.
All right, I think we got most of that, but sorry, Joe. I think their connection's really fading out on us. But it sounds like maybe through August, with the timing wise, we'll get all that work out. Okay. Without further discussion, we'll move on to the next item, which is the 2022 Commission and Committee Annual Reports. This is a new process that we're doing this year. So one of the benefits of being the chair and the vice chair of this group is you have the opportunity to create a document that you submit to our council, just kind of to give them an idea of what we've tried to accomplish and have accomplished and have done over the last 12 months. And the same goes for the 4 groups that are within us. So all of that information comes together, and then we would submit it to the council. This year, the council has asked that we run it through the group so everyone can take a chance to look at it, ingest it, make some comments, and I'm certainly open to any comments or revisions or critiques that anyone might have to make this document better and more clear about our accomplishments and our processes and our desires to the council going forward. So with that, I know that y'all had time to kind of look at that. Is there any kind of comments or anything else that you feel like we should talk about within the reports? All right. Without comment, Jessica, what's our step here? Do we need a? Oh, we do have a motion. So if there's no comments about the documents, we can. I can take a motion to approve to submit the 2022 annual reports to the City Council. Randy, yes.
I move that we submit the reports from our various committees and our own commission to council for the record.
Thank you, Randy. Can I get a second? Pat, a second. And can I get some any comments or questions about the reports? All right. Without counter question, we will do a roll call vote. Randy.
Aye.
Kenny.
Aye.
Jack.
Aye.
Leanna.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Joseph. Aye. And I'm an aye as well. The motion carries. Thanks, everyone. Okay, the next item, sorry, I'm breaking up here a little bit, is the proposed speed limit changes. Jessica.
Hi there. I'm going to pass it over to Chris Cairns, our city traffic engineer, and he's going to present this item to you guys.
Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Jessica. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Cairns, the city traffic engineer, and it looks like I can share my screen, so I'm going to put up a map with 5 proposed speed limit changes. One of them is a pair. 1 second. I'll start with first I'll give you the overall view. Biltmore Avenue is a segment on the NCDOT road. And then in Lee Garden Heights, we got 2 streets changing there. In West Asheville, we've got Pruitt Street and Deaverview Road. So that's just an overview. The limits, Biltmore Avenue is down by Orangefield from Hilliard Avenue to Aston Street. To me, that's been kind of, I think, an oversight that it's 35 miles per hour. It's been there for a very long time. So that with all the pedestrian activity there, we requested the reduction and NCDOT agreed. I'll get to the numbers in a second. Lee Garden Lane and John Walker, those are part of the newly built housing. Deaverview Road, we got the request actually from multiple citizens that live along Deaverview. and Pruitt Street, we had one citizen who requested traffic calming, and we really can't do that until there's a speed limit established. So that is basically, here are the numbers, and I have other maps with this, but Biltmore is at 35 today and will be 20 miles per hour pending council approval. And Lee Garden Lane, John Walker, actually all the four within the city, none of them has a speed limit in ordinance. So by default, by North Carolina general statutes, it's 35 miles per hour, which really is not appropriate for any of these. So what we've looked at, we looked at the nature of the context, and we measured speeds on all of these streets and established 20 miles per hour on the really the smaller, more core residential. Beaverview has a totally different nature to it, and ultimately a lower speed limit may be appropriate, but stepping down from the current, I think 30 mile per hour is my recommendation. So just smaller maps here, Biltmore, and there's the new streets, newly rebuilt streets. We were requested to put in speed limit signs, and we said, well, let's get some that are not 35. So that is why. And here are Pruitt Street and Beaverview. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer. And I see Randy has his hand up.
Surprise, right? So thanks, Chris, again, so much for working on this and bringing this to this group, because these are so important for multimodal transportation. First of all, the Biltmore one, that's great. Hopefully we can continue, because every little piece counts. So I think you probably heard from us, we want to have it slower further down, especially the south side, and bike things installed and all sorts of things there. And actually have bike facilities all the way to John Walker Avenue, which is, a really important connector to a community that doesn't have access to single-use vehicles a lot of times and needs to have transportation access to certainly the downtown area as well as other areas of the city. And so multimodal transportation for that community is super important. And the Biltmore one is a step in the right direction. So appreciate that so much. I'm wondering about Lee Garden Lane. Is 20 the lowest we can go there? So I can understand John Walker Avenue because that's an entrance and exit road, and so 20 miles an hour might make sense there. But to me, it seems like Lee Walker Lane should be lower than 20, because it's really pedestrian facility as much as it is a car facility. And so, as you know, like in a lot of places in Europe, they'll have walking pace or pace of traffic. So it would be like home zones they have in Germany and stuff like that. It would be more appropriate to be like 10 miles an hour, and then again, that might be pretty hard for us to go if there are state laws that say we can't go any lower than 20 miles an hour on that street, because it's really, that's right up against the residences where people are walking directly from the residences out into the street, and people are walking their dogs, playing in the streets. Those are really public spaces more than they are streets, and I think in the way the community views those. And so it seems like 20 miles an hour might be too fast for that area.
Understood, Randy. And I think there are sidewalks throughout, but typically our residential speed limits are 25 and then 20 on the lower end. So, I mean, that to me was one of my frames of reference, is what we've done citywide.
I appreciate that, but I think we should make a bold step here to make our city safer, because even at 20 mile per hour, so a vehicle hitting somebody at 20 miles an hour, the incident of severe injury is much, much higher than it is at 10 or 15 miles an hour even. So as we get each 5 mile increment, and even though there are sidewalks there, I'll bet if you go through that community at any day of the week, you're going to see people not just using the sidewalks for pedestrian, and bicycle, and skateboard, and basketball, and everything else access too. So, I mean, there are sidewalks, that's true, but the nature of that community, and in many other communities around the city, but this one being a new community and us being able to establish a priority for pedestrians and for not a priority for cars, seems like this is a great opportunity to make a bold step and not just say, well, what have you done in the past, but what do we want to do in the future? And in the future, I want our streets to be safer. Like my street I live on is a dead-end street, and the speed limit is 25. And my residents, actually, one of them said he wants to take the sign down because 25 is way too fast for our street. It should be much lower than that, because we don't have sidewalks in my neighborhood, and people walk dogs all the time. People walk when they run. There's constantly pedestrians in the streets, and 25 is just too fast for that street. And so I think we should set a precedent for what we want to do forward, not looking backwards, saying what have we done in the past, but what do we want our city to look like? And so I really think that we need to express, if possible, if it doesn't, and even if it is precluded by state statute, I think we should make some bold statements to say we're a Vision Zero city. We just received funding. Land of Sky just received funding for Vision Zero plan, which they're going to start working on. And part of that is not just fatalities, but severe injuries. And I think that part of that is slowing down traffic, and especially pedestrian-oriented areas, which this is certainly one of them.
Thank you, Randy. Yeah, I understand all of that. Jack, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Christopher, can you clarify a bit on Deaverview Road? Can you tell me what the current speed limit is? And then I wasn't clear on, you mentioned incrementally moving it down to 30, but not below 30. And I just I didn't understand that. Can you explain that a little bit further for clarification?
Absolutely. So I'll start with what the speed limit is today. Actually, there are no speed limit signs on the street. If there were speed limit signs, it would be 35, because that is by default what by statute, that's what the speed limit is. Now, as you get farther west and get into the county, it does have an established speed limit, but that's west of Pisgah View. So as far as incremental and stuff, we look at multiple things. I mean, the context of the road is super important, and the measured speeds is another aspect, and number of driveways, the nature of the businesses and things like that. And one of the things, and I know nationwide we are trying to get away from 85th percentile speeds, but it's an indicator that if you put something way too far away from the 85th percentile speeds, you will not get compliance. And that's based on my personal experience, but a professional experience. But the 85th percentile speeds today are 40 miles per hour on Deaverview. And to try to go to 25 or 20 is just basically telling people that, it's not providing people a good enough guidance that they'll adhere to. So that's an important component to it. And there are other things that we can look at in the future. And I'm also, they're just hopefully having an actual speed limit. And then we plan to take out the driver feedback signs once the speed limit signs are up to help people become aware of the 30 mile per hour. So hopefully that starts bringing speeds down, and it's something that can be reevaluated as more housing comes in and other things happen along the corridor.
So it's something the city continues to keep an eye on, or does it have to be activated by community members to say, it's not working, we want this? What does that next step look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. Just by volume of the things that we do, it's hard for us to just keep track of every street's speed limit. Deaverview is a special one. It has some safety issues on it, so it's one that I personally will keep track of, but it's hard to do. So we do rely on this, and we have at least one citizen or resident along this road who will, has been she's been active on this street for a few years. So I expect to keep the conversation going with her.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarifying, and hats off to that person on Deaverview. Keep it up.
Well, she actually asked for traffic calming, which I told her that it wouldn't qualify based on our policy of that, but the first step is to get speed limits.
Hey, Chris, Dennis here. When would be the next time that we would do some speed monitoring to understand if we have affected that 85 percentile, and if we could then make another step?
Are you talking on these streets that were
I'm sorry,
on right now?
Deaverview, sorry.
I mean, we don't have a set time frame, but that's something that after the speed limit signs are up, we can go back probably a few months after would be the soonest. But it's something that can be done.
Okay. I was just thinking, it seems as though that is, driving a lot of this. We want to make sure that we're adhering to that 85 percentile kind of understanding. And if we, in a year's time, were to go back and say, okay, now that we're at, 31 or 30, something like that, we can then make an adjustment and be more responsive to this resident who really clearly has it has an interest in making that road a little bit safer. I just didn't know if there's something we could do proactively now that would, possibly affect that process.
Again, this one is a deep review is a special one, and it's something that we're looking at some others. We're looking at crash patterns along the street to see if there's other things that we can address. But your point is taken. I will mention there's one check that we do when we do our speed limit reviews. It's a program called US Limits 2. It's a safety-based tool from Federal Highway Administration that takes into account number of driveways, crash history, things like the speeds and all that. It actually recommended a 35 mile per hour speed limit, and we use it as a check. We don't use it as our final answer. It's one that I disagreed with. So we're pushing lower than past practices, I'll just say.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Any other comments or questions? So I think we're
looking... another hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Kenneth.
Kenny.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to Lee Garden Lane. I do feel like 20 miles per hour is way too fast. I mean, that's a parking lot essentially with playgrounds, and it's a problem. I mean, my street is also a residential street, and it's 25 miles per hour. If you actually drove 25 miles per hour down the street, it's like almost impossible to do it. So I think the design of the street and the land use around it should reflect on how fast we're asking people to drive. I think 30 miles per hour in deep review kind of makes sense, but for a cul-de-sac residential neighborhood, 20 miles per hour is still a little bit high. Just my 2 cents, but I appreciate your efforts to lower speed limits throughout town, and I hope that continues.
Thank you, Kenny.
Any other comments or questions? So it looks like we are looking for a motion here, recommending the city to approve the proposed speed limit changes as the recommended motion. Anyone have an interest in that?
I make a motion to accept the recommendations that Chris has put forward.
This is Leanna, I second.
Okay, motion and second. And any other comments or questions? Okay, well, Randy, yes, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I might vote no just because I think we need to go lower on Lee Gardens Lane. I don't think that we should accept it's not safe. I think we should accept safety, and I so appreciate the lowering the speed limits, and it's great, and we should definitely doing it. But we shouldn't say, this is as good as we can get right now, or this is good enough. I think we should say, no, we want it to be appropriate. And appropriate is slower than 20 miles per hour on that street. And so if it isn't possible to do, then it's not possible to do. But we shouldn't say that's not what we want. That's what we need for a safe community. We need that for a safe community, and so we should ask for it whether we get it or not. So I think currently I'd vote no, because I think it should be lower on Lee Garden Lane.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Kenny?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of difference between, say, D Review and Fillmore Avenue and Pruitt Street. So is it, if possible, can we go through and make a motion on each one?
Yeah, I think we could. We would have to, we have a motion in a second, so we can go through that vote, and then we can, if that is not successful, we can go back and make another motion, potentially. Leanna, do you have a comment?
I do. I appreciate Randy's concern with safety and the sense of community. I live on a road that has a speed limit of 20, and many people don't go 20. We don't have sidewalks here. I also just want to point out that, policing around speeding is unequally applied. And I am cognizant that setting up rules for failure, and I know how I drive sometimes when I'm on my way home and I just want to get home and I've had a long day and I might be going faster than I should. I might be going faster than 20, and I would ask each of us to think if sometimes we speed. So I also just want to call in that there are a lot of factors that, you know, staff consider in making their recommendations. They are bringing their highest and best recommendation to us, and I really value and appreciate that. And I understand the nod for safety, and I understand the nod for the constraints of a given street. I also think that there's a lot of considerations that are also factored into the recommendations being made, and therefore I'm willing to support a complete slate, and as I put forward the motion.
Thanks, Leanna. Any other comments or questions? All right. There is a motion and a second, so we're going to have a vote. The vote, we'll start with Randy Warren.
I'm voting nay.
Kenny?
Nay.
Jack?
I'm an aye.
Leanna?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Bill?
No.
And Joseph? I don't know.
I'll vote aye.
And I am an aye as well. And I think that is a motion will carry. Yes, motion will carry. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate your help.
Thank you, Chris.
Next item is the I-26 project, Riverside Drive update. Ken. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Ken, before you speak, Kenny, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just before city staff leaves, are there a bunch of streets that don't have speed limits established? And is this like an ongoing process to figure out what to put for them?
Yes, Kenny, there are many streets without speed limits. It is an ongoing thing.
And therefore they default to 35 currently, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Randy?
Which is real quick. Thanks you, Kenny, for bringing that up, and Chris, because that's why what we have proposed, Multimodal, has sent a motion to council to lower the default speed limit in the city of Asheville to 25, because the streets that don't have the default speed limit is 35, which is ridiculous. And so I know there's a state statute saying it's not supposed to be below that, but you know, Weaverville and Black Mountain, and there's a whole bunch of cities that have lowered it and haven't suffered any negative consequences as far as I know from it. And yet our city council doesn't bring it up. They say that they are afraid to, or I'm not sure, you know, they won't let them. But it's crucial, I think, that we lower our default speed limit to 25. So thanks for bringing that up, because then that helps us make that the standard, and we can make adjustments from 25 rather than 35 being the standard, which is just dangerous.
Thanks, Randy. Okay, so we're going to move to the I-26 project, Riverside Drive update. Ken, welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've got an update for you. First of all, I assume that every one of you know that the City Council approved all of the Aesthetics Committee's recommendations for sections B and D on Valentine's Day, February 14th. So that was a good Valentine's gift for the Aesthetics Committee and all of us. So Maggie, we appreciate you and the other council members supporting that effort. As a part of that process, Mark Hunt, a former city council member, had reached out to me to get some information, and he was particularly interested in Riverside Drive, and he wanted to see what the cross section was. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I will show you what the recommended cross section is on that. If you'll bear with me just 1 second. So does everybody see it? With computer access, can you all see it?
Yes.
A little bit larger, please.
How's that?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I can't see you all, but I'll try to talk through this. So on the left-hand side on this page, you'll see a 10-foot multi-use path that's shown. And then there's a 5-foot separation to the back of the curb and gutter. And then there's the 2-foot gutter for the road. Then what's proposed is a 5-foot bike lane with a 3-foot painted buffer, and then an 11-foot travel lane, and then it's repeated on the other side, as you can see. So what Mark was suggesting for at least consideration is what he basically asked was that the 8 feet for the bike lane and the 3-foot buffer on both sides be removed. That's 16 feet, and then take 6 feet of that and add it to the 10-foot existing multi-use path. And then the other 10 feet could just be used for landscaping or whatever the case may be. That was the proposal that he shared in an email. I don't know if you all saw the email, but that's what we're working from. The DOT already has this, and a review of this is already underway between the DOT and also the Aesthetics Committee. Now, one of the things that's very important, and I'll try to explain this, when the DOT builds a brand new 2-lane road that's got curb and gutter on it, there has to be enough width to serve as a breakdown lane for a stalled vehicle. So what the DOT has initially said in their response to what Mark is asking, that of this cross section, they would be able to take away the buffer on each side at 6 feet, and they would be able to add that to the multi-use transportation path. But the rest of the footprint for that road would still have to be 32 feet wide, and that would give two 16-foot lanes, and that would serve as their breakdown lane. So does anybody have any questions about that or concerns? And Randy, I am interested in hearing your thoughts on that as well. And before we get into this, I just want to show one other drawing here. Bear with me just a second. Okay. Now this one, and I'll get this one bigger too. Okay. So here is what is in the gap plan for the North Rad Tip French Broad Greenway. This section in yellow, which it starts down here at the Pearson Bridge Road and goes all the way up to Broadway Street, that's the multi-use, or that's the greenway that would be that, what I just showed you a minute ago was the 10-foot width. And then the red portion, the C portion, would be the greenway when it's up against the river. So what we would have if we were to change what's offered, then between Hill Street and up to Pearson Bridge Road, ultimately we'd not only have a greenway by the river, but we would have a multi-use transportation path that would be 16 feet wide. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and then I can be glad to try to answer any and all questions. Okay, I think I'm back. And Randy, I assume you were first, so I apologize, Joe, if it wasn't.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ken, so much. And I appreciate Mark was, you know, he was kind of, his time was ending as I was moving into Asheville and stuff too. And I understand he was a great advocate for multimodal transportation as well as for bicycling and pedestrian. And so I appreciate all the good work he's done. I think though his perspective in this case is not appropriate because he is discounting the population that uses bike lanes. So this, just south of where this section is, there are bike lanes. So where the cycle track ends with the rad tip, and up until this point, it's bike lanes. And so that gives us right now a section from the bridge on Meadow Road over the railroad tracks all the way to Broadway, if this is done with bike lanes, a rather fast transportation network for commuters who want to go through the area to get to work on time. And if we just have a greenway on any one portion of that is that transportation network, that does a disservice for people who want to use their bike for transportation, because now they're going to be encountering pedestrians and people with strollers and skateboards and all sorts of things like that too, that are going to be going at a much slower pace. And so the safe thing for bicycles to do in that situation is to ride much slower, which then limits their ability to use it as a transportation network. So I think that, like you said, there's going to be two greenway type facilities, one by the river, one by the road here, which gives lots of options for people to still utilize that. But if we can maintain the bike lanes that are planned right now on the road, then we give an option for those people who want to use their bike as a transportation network. Not even talking about the people who are racers who want to go fast through the area too. Like when I'm training, I don't want to go 5 miles an hour through the area to be safe and not, give anybody who's using the greenway, any reason to be not comfortable with that experience. So I really think it's important to have the bike lanes there, because that completes an important section of the bicycle network there that people use for transportation. And so as much as I respect Mark's opinion on this and making it safe as possible for people to ride their bikes on a separated area like a greenway, I also think that for a certain percentage of the population, it's essential to have a bike lane in this area.
Thank you, Randy. Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I agree. Two things. Well, one is a question for you, Ken, and I can wait for the answer because I've got a follow-up comment. Is there a proposal to drop the speed limit to 35 when this gets done? Because in my mind, that eliminates one of Mark Hunt's key concerns with keeping the bike lanes on the road.
Yes.
I look at this exactly the same way Randy does, and even before I got on planning and zoning and multimodal, when the rad tip project was going through and there was a proposal to not have the separated bike track, which we do now, I got up and made the comment that, well, I'm still going to ride on the road because you're going to force me onto a greenway where there's going to be slower people, and I want to ride through there. I don't want to have to be dodging people, and people don't want to be having to worry about me. And so thus we were able to higher powers decided that it was smart to put in the bike track and not just have it one large greenway component. So I think this is a similar situation. We need to keep the bike lanes, and as much as I concur with some of Mark's concerns, I think keeping the bike lanes is great. I think we just need to advocate for making that road 35 would be my comment.
Well, thank you, Joe. And I have good news for you. The design speed of Riverside Drive is going to be 40 and the speed limit will be 35.
That means we can sign it at 30, right?
Well, if indeed we do a study and we determine that, it opens the door. It doesn't shut the door totally. Okay? But that's what the DOT is going to do is build it so that the 35 can definitely be the speed limit. Elizabeth, you had your hand up. You have a question?
I was just going to say just some of the same comments that have been made.
Oh, okay. And I will say that, well, I think there's going to be some more follow-up meetings on this, so that's why I wanted to get your all's opinions on this. So that's very helpful for me. Anybody else got a question? Kenneth.
Just something that's come up in the Greenway Committee is the need for landscaping between the sidewalk along the eastern side and the giant retaining wall. I feel like the cross section doesn't do the retaining wall justice. It's not going to be a 4-foot retaining wall. It's going to be huge. So having space to add a little bit of landscaping could be really important when it comes to just overall aesthetics and attractiveness and encouraging people to use it. I'd rather walk next to some trees and bushes than I would a giant wall. So there is a demand for that. But I kind of err on the side of an all of the above approach. So I do support still having bike lanes on the road.
Thank you, Kenneth. And I will say that, and I apologize, the figure that I showed you has been changed a little bit, and this was advocated by the Aesthetics Committee. There will be no sidewalk on the east side up against the wall. That will just be a landscaped area. And because there's really not a need for a sidewalk when there's really no place to go because you're following a wall. Now, when you go from the section from from Pearson Bridge Road up toward Broadway, there comes a point near the end of that where there are some activities. And what the DOT is planning to do there is to have a mid-block crossing to get those folks over to those areas there before, without going all the way up to the intersection. Joe.
Thanks for clarifying that, Ken, because that was one of the things I forgot to mention was about that needing to have a sidewalk on the east side, because it doesn't make sense. And I also wondered too, has there been thought given to doing more of a protected bike lane? Obviously there right now it's calling for the 3-foot wide painted buffer, but something like, the vertical delineators or something there that might provide a little more security. I mean, I see a lot of people biking along the bike lanes there right now, recreation and commuting. So I just, obviously the more people feel safe, the more people are going to use it. So
yes, I think as far as vertical delineators, I think that's something that we can definitely have. I think the thing that we as a city would just have to be comfortable with, and so I don't have the firm answer today, but that we would just have to be sure that we're going to maintain those delineators, because fortunately, even this year, we haven't had a big snow, cross our fingers, but if the snow plows take them out, if there is a crash or something, and we just have to be prepared to do that. So that would be the thing that we'd have to just make sure with Public Works. But I don't think what you're asking for there would be an impossible thing. And the only example of a buffer that we've really got like this is our Martin Luther King, and we did not even put the cross hatching in it. And when it was first put out there, it was very confusing to people. Okay. I don't know who is next. I'm sorry. Pat, it says Bill, but I know you're not Bill.
I don't know why my husband's name is popping up. It's my computer. But his and my experience of riding bicycles in other cities, like most recently Washington, D.C., is the more protected the lane is, the more consistent speed you can go, the faster your commute. And so barrier to me would be, I'm a big proponent of that, because that gets more people feeling safe on the road.
Okay, I'll definitely share that comment. Dennis?
Just to kind of talk about the delineation, I've noticed that we have that right now on Meadow, in the new striping on Meadow, and there's that space. And anecdotally, I've noticed that vehicles, because it does tighten up the lanes a little bit when we have that delineation and then the bike lane, I've noticed a lot of folks actually operating in the striped area, and then when they see a bike, they'll come back in. But I worry if that is, that'll kind of wear down our paint. So it's going to require some maintenance on our part or whatever it might be to make sure that we're keeping that as visible as possible. I was so delighted to see that space, because I feel so much safer riding my bike on that road now. But I do notice that folks we're leaking over, because it does feel a little bit tight when you're going that speed around that turn, and all those things put together kind of create that a little bit of discomfort, I think, for the drivers.
Good point. Jack?
Ken and maybe Randy, Joe, you can chime in on this, but can you help me I'm reading Mark Hunt's letter, and he's arguing that, adding just 6 feet to the MUP to make it 16 feet in width will result in a more functional and safe facility. So I wonder if we can dive into that. I'm not sure. I want to understand, what's your sense of that? Is that, help me understand that a little bit better, Mark's argument, and maybe what yours would be against it.
Sure, I can answer this. I think, so Mark said that people don't feel comfortable in a bike lane, don't use it. So he's trying to say if we make it wider, then they will use Greenway. But I ride that road all the time, and I see people on it all the time too, and I have a lot of friends that ride on it all the time. So I don't know if Mark's experience is what's actually happening on the roadway there. And then also too, if you're on a 16-foot or a 10-foot, it's better to have a 16-foot greenway or multi-use path than it is a 10-foot. Just do this because you have more space to share with people. But people don't always use that in an organized way. So, ideally, if you're pedestrians, you stay to the outside. If you're going faster, you stay toward the inside, ideally. But that rarely happens, even on trails around the country that are heavily marked. So it's unreasonable to expect people to allow for bicycles going very quickly at all. I mean, if you're going faster than 10 miles an hour and you've got pedestrians on even a 16-foot facility where they're cutting back and forth and stuff too, you just can't go very fast on a bike at all there. And so by having the bike lanes that allows somebody who's trying to get through the area, quickly, like you would be if you're going to work or something, then you can go up to 35 miles an hour, the speed limit, and not have to worry about pedestrians or anything else, especially going north there where you've got a retaining wall on the right side, so no cross traffic whatsoever. So I think Mark's perspective is just skewed, thinking that same kind of transportation can happen on a 16-foot multi-use path is just not reality. And so he's not thinking about anybody wanting to ride their bike any faster than, I guess, 10 miles an hour, and that's just not the reality of the situation. Does that help, Jack, at all?
That does, Randy. Thanks.
Kenneth?
Yeah, Ken, I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about the city's status with the separate greenway along the river, because I feel like, this DOT portion is funded, it's happening, how we design it is a little bit up in the air, but it's happening. I feel like the city's portion is still a little bit nebulous and there's no funding to secure it. So I feel like, I look at this and see, the Riverside Drive corridor is the transportation corridor, and then that separate greenway is the recreation tool. But if that never happens or is 30 years away from happening, I feel like we need to make sure that Riverside Drive can handle both bike and ped for the foreseeable future. Can you talk about the Riverside Greenway?
I don't have a lot of information on that. I do know that one of the challenges for I see Anna Sexton's on it, so I'm gonna hush a minute and let Anna answer your question. Thanks, Anna.
Hi, Ken. I was waiting to see if you wanted me to chime in here, but for the extension of the Rad Tip Greenway from Hill Street up to Pearson Bridge Road, we are this close to taking an approved scope and contract to council. So I think that we are hoping to do that within the next month or two. We're still working with the consultant to finalize some details and finalize some things with NCDOT, but that's for like preliminary engineering and design of the greenway. And then I do believe that in future fiscal years, we have some money for construction. So it should be happening.
Randy?
But then again, that just takes us up to Pearson Bridge. So that would be the connector then to what we're talking about right now, correct?
Correct. Right. We, in realizing the Riverside Drive project that NCDOT is taking on as part of the I-26 connector project, that was, I think, the preferred alignment resulting from the feasibility study that was done for the North Rad Tip Greenway project several years ago. And so that was sort of our way to leverage cost sharing to get the greenway on the ground.
Okay, go ahead, Pat.
I don't have enough documentation in front of me to know which side of Riverside Drive is going to be getting the greenway. Is it going to be hugging 26, or is it going to swing out and hug the river?
It's the west side. It runs parallel to the railroad track on the lower end.
Okay. All
it's
right.
on the west side all the way up.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth.
My question is, with all the funding and the reading through Mark's letter, wanting to spend more money, and I know some of these aesthetics were recommendations were approved, and then Jack's comment about the funding and other people's, how does any of this affect the funding on the other side of the Greenway, the other end of the river, going across Biltmore and River Road? Are they mutually exclusive? Are they going to be happening simultaneously? Is there some sort of order, like the next 5 years we're going to work to increase it into the west and north more, or is it going to be going both directions?
Are you talking about?
Does that make sense?
Are you talking about the greenways themselves?
Yeah, all of these that we're talking about, all these bike paths and greenways and all these things that are in the west and north, continuing west and north. I'm talking about sort of the other end. Are these mutually exclusive? Will they be happening simultaneously to go to the, or is this just connected to the I-26 part?
This part right here we're just talking about is connected to the I-26 project, but the GAP plan that was approved by council in October, it outlines the priorities for the greenways. And the DOT is on course for these sections, Section B and Section D. Section B begins down below Haywood Road Bridge, goes all the way up to Broadway. So it's the biggest chunk of the I-26 connector project. D is Riverside Drive. So that's, you can it's easy to remember. They're going to do it with a design build process, and the anticipated award date for this is October of this year. And the estimated cost is $1.3 billion. Probably the largest design build project DOT's ever done to this point. Joseph, you have a question?
Yeah, Ken or Anna, the Riverside Drive portion of the Greenway, is that going to parallel the railroad as you mentioned, or the railroad's not going to be used as the right-of-way? Is that correct?
No, the railroad is still an active track for one business with a weekly trip.
That's the pipe plant for the.
Yes, sir. And then right around Pearson Bridge, the railroad is no longer running along Riverside Drive. It's up against the river.
Thank you very much.
Sure, Leanna.
It doesn't seem like we're taking a formal vote on this, so I just wanted to lodge my support for keeping it as designed as you presented, Ken, with the variation around not having maybe the sidewalk against that tall wall. I do think that there's a lot of potential for user conflict with simply a wider greenway and multimodal path to 16 feet, particularly with the advent of electric bikes and scooters and things that accelerate speed so much. I think that it would be probably a detriment to all users if it was simply unified and combined in that one place.
Thank you. Jack.
This is maybe getting a little bit off topic, but I just wanted to put a plug in for the record. I think I'm definitely concerned about some of the neighborhood connections that are part of this project, in particular, sort of by Hominy Creek, and that really complicated geography and road work. And I know that a lot of input has gone in to the city and DOT to thoughtfully think about those connections, but I just wanted to, that's a big concern of mine. I think this is, there's a great core. I think the city is obviously missing so many of these connection pieces, and I would just hate to miss the opportunity to get it right. So I just wanted to put that plug in.
Thank you. Kenneth?
Yeah, for sure. We're spending a lot of money on this, so let's get it right. 2 points I had. People don't use Riverside Drive bike lanes because they suck. They're in the gutter. Every time I ride on it, there's sticks and mud, and I have to swerve into the road just to get around stuff. So having a 6 foot wide bike lane on each side with a buffer can make a huge difference in terms of who's riding and why they're riding. But also to the same point, widening the multi-use path from 10 to 16 can also have a huge impact. I remember riding on a rail trail that was 10 feet wide, and it was so narrow every time I biked past somebody biking in the other way direction. But when they widened it from 10 to 12, all of a sudden it's uber comfortable and everybody was fine. So I would ride my bike with my kids on Riverside Drive a lot more often if I knew there was a buffer. I knew I didn't have to ride in the mud in the gutter. But I would also advocate for a wider multi-use path. So can we just get rid of the car traffic altogether and just have one giant multi-use path, please?
That's a good suggestion, but I don't think that'll work, Kenneth. Randy.
I just want to mention real quick too, thanks Kenny for talking about bike lane maintenance. And the Bike Ped Task Force has had some pretty good discussions with Ken and the Transportation Department for Asheville about how do we do that better? Because something like Riverside Drive is a state-owned road, but the city takes over the maintenance on it because they allowed bike lane striping on it, and so it's a kind of a delicate balance in there. But we have started talking about how to clean it better, how to orient some of the grates that are in the wrong orientation, how to take care of the vegetation that grows out into the lane, and things like that too. So that is ongoing discussions with Bike Ped and the city, and so I think it's definitely on our radar, and we appreciate Ken's willingness to work with us and to try and make that a better situation on Riverside, but also throughout the city to establish patterns we can establish on any facility that's, non-motorized traffic primarily. Because it is a big concern for sure.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's input.
Thanks,
Dennis,
Ken.
I'll hand it back to you, Dennis.
Appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next up is unfinished business. Jessica, are there any things you want to tick off in that list? Lose you?
I'm sorry, the one that I was hoping that we'd get to, but we're running very short on time, is the Greenway and Bike Ped Task Force merger conversation. Do you want to proceed, or do you want to hold it for the next month?
I would prefer to hold it if that's okay with the group. I really want to have a pretty in-depth conversation about this. I think it's really important that we all understand what's going on and how we're going to, go forward here. So if that's okay with you, I think that's a good call.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like, there's no timeline, deadline per se. This is just a conversation and that we've been having with all of the groups. And so, nobody's driving the deadline here. So there's no harm, I don't believe, in continuing it to the next meeting.
Okay. Randy, you have a thought?
Yeah, thanks. So I know stabling this to the next meeting as well too. I just want to let people know in this group though that there's lots of discussions going on in Greenways and Bike Ped about how do we make this work, because I think that we all agree that we're going to merge these groups in their one group at one point in time, but we want to make sure that we honor both what Greenways is doing and what Bike Ped is doing, and how we make sure that they have good representation for all the issues that are currently going on in both the groups with the new group that would encompass both their issues too. So it's a very intentional process, and you guys may not see it on a regular basis, but I've been dealing with this on Bike Ped and attending some Greenway meetings too, and Greenway's been dealing with it for months now. And so we're committed to continuing to do this on an ongoing basis until we end up with whatever committee we're going to have eventually. So even though we might not talk about it today, and I agree with Dennis too, we want to have an in-depth discussion about this by Multimodal as well. But a lot of prep work is going on behind the scenes with the other two groups. And I think that if we wait another month, only more prep work will happen because, I just sent out another document yesterday or something like that to get additional input on some other things for this process too. So it's just a lot of stuff going on to let you guys know, and we don't have to discuss, or just like Jessica said, there's no deadline today or anything too. We don't want to wait forever, but at the same time, we're moving forward pretty rapidly, I think. And I appreciate the city not pressing us too much, because Jessica she could say, you need to decide this, this month. And she's been very gracious in giving us time to make sure we do this right. And I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Randy. Jessica?
I'll just say that, you know, I don't know that anybody needs to be working to prepare anything. I think what we've talked about at the multimodal level, and I think there's been some confusion, and that's, I think, natural, but is that we're not having one group acquire the other. It's really just a kind of a starting fresh with a new committee, and that development of that committee would firstly need to be approved by the Multimodal Commission. But what I'm hoping for is that there could be like a subcommittee, if you will, kind of like we talked about for the membership criteria or scoring, that a group could come together that represents both existing groups and maybe some at-large members, and they could work together to develop what the bylaws might look like, what the purpose might look like, and membership, etc., and then come back and come forward to the multimodal for ultimate approval. So I think it would be within a subgroup that they would do the heavy lifting in terms of figuring out how this new group will be comprised.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And I think we can have a good conversation in the next meeting about that, and then kind of assign some next steps or define some next steps as a group.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So we're bumping up against it here. So without objection, I'm going to see if we'll table our updates, and please note the future agenda items. We have another meeting coming up next month. If anyone, Joe, yes, please.
Just real quick, I put something in the chat, a link to there's a big new development project that the Y and First Baptist Church are proposing downtown. Multimodal definitely should be aware of it and make input comments. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, that's a huge one, and one that we should be involved with. Thanks, everybody. We will see each other next month. Thanks for your time. Take care.